Okay, it's 1 minute past 10. I think that's enough waiting for us, and we'll get going today as a very brief session. So, first and foremost, morning everybody, and welcome. Thank you all very much indeed for joining our very first webinar in this series, exploring how tax technology can help you. Before I jump into today's agenda, I just wanted to run through a couple of very quick housekeeping points. Today's session will be recorded and will be emailed around at the end, so please feel free to share that with any colleagues who have missed today's event. You will have an opportunity to ask questions, and we'll be covering those at the end. Please do ask them throughout, but if you could use the Q&A option inside Zoom rather than the chat function, that would be really helpful, and it will make it easier for any questions that we miss to pick up at the end. There is going to be a follow-up session following on from today's topic in the next couple of weeks. So if anybody is interested in a deeper dive, today's session will be kept to 30 minutes. It is intended to be that kind of short soundbite type approach. So without further ado, let's get into our main event. My name's Ian Bowden, a partner here at BDO and head of our tax performance engineering group. Not sure I like the term veteran that marketing used on the advert for this webcast, as it does make me feel even older. But I have been working in tax technology and transformation for over 25 years. I've run some of the largest tax transformation programs globally, covering all sorts of different sectors and all sorts of different clients. Delighted to be joined today by Amit Dev, who's our indirect tax lead, and he's been responsible for helping organizations select and implement the right VAT solutions for themselves, with a big focus on MTD. The purpose of this series of webinars is to help answer a statement rather than a question that I hear fairly regularly, and that's that I didn't know technology could do that. It's usually quickly followed up with, where do I start? But I wanted to put on this series of really short, sharp webinars to help raise awareness of some of the great options that are available to help you with your everyday tasks. Really trying to find a better way for you to stay compliant and make your lives easier, particularly at difficult and pressured times. These are intended to be 30-minute sessions with a focus on a different topic each month. So they'll all follow the same format. We'll start with a brief summary of the particular area that we're focused on, followed by a presentation from a special guest. And the intention that special guest will either be from the tax technology sector or a client that's been on that journey. And if there are any topics that you're interested in hearing about or seeing, please do message me and let me know, and we will add them into the agenda. So delighted to start off our first webcast with Amit, and the focus is going to be indirect taxes today. But also our special guest this morning is Jim Khan, who I've known for many years. And Jim is with an organization that you may not have heard of. And that's part of the reason for doing these as well, to raise awareness of some fantastic organizations that are doing things just a little bit different. And Jim's here today to introduce us to an organization called Cygnet Infotech. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about what they have to offer, and with a particular focus on indirect taxes. So thanks very much for joining us, Jim. Before we get to Jim, I just wanted to kind of pass over to Amit, but I wanted to ask Amit if he could give us his views at the moment in terms of what he's seeing in the market around clients, what clients are doing, and if you could give us a bit of an insight into any updates on MTD, Amit, that would be great. And lastly, thank you ever so much for joining us on your holiday. I know it is half term, and Amit's joining us from his glamorous hotel location, so thanks, Amit, appreciate that. But if you could, over to you.
Thank you, Ian, and good morning all. So I'm joining you from what right now is a sunny Exmoor National Park here for the half-term break. And in terms of what I do over the years, I've had the great pleasure of assisting clients with their tax technology matters that they've had to grapple with, specializing in the indirect tax area of it. So helping them improve their VAT processes, including implementing solutions for them. So today, I just want to briefly go over a VAT update, and then as Ian has already asked, to go over what we've been seeing businesses do in terms of the area of MTD for VAT. So in terms of this brief update, just want to talk about MTD penalties. So this has been recently published by HMRC just May this year, so it's quite a new area really. And in terms of what the guidance says, there's really three, or actually four broad areas in terms of the VAT penalties. So let's just work quickly through this slide. So in terms of the first area, it talks about VAT return filing, and we kind of talk about this as the easy bit, so making sure you have some sort of MTD compliant software which enables a business to file their VAT returns to HMRC in a compliant manner. Most businesses that we've talked to are already compliant in this area, and if you're not, you probably know already that from 1st of November, the HMRC is going to switch off the VAT portal way of submitting VAT returns. So it's going to be an end of an era when that happens very soon. So that's really the easy bit. And if you're not compliant, then you're probably looking at around £400 penalty per VAT return filed. Okay, so that's the easy bit. Now going on to the harder bits, as we kind of phrase them, is a digital record keeping bit and digital links bit. So in terms of digital records, it's the usual requirements for your accounting system, making sure it's able to account for net VAT and gross, for example, and also some business standing data as well. But the bit that we've seen businesses overlook, which is quite an important part of this requirement, is the requirement to have an accurate split of the box 6 figure. So in terms of this, it's really thinking about what's the difference, for example, between the VAT treatments of 0 rated, exempt, and outside the scope. I mean, that's driven through tax code assignment, making sure that process there is accurate. Usually there's some human intervention there, a decision making being made. So that's a bit of an area of focus for a lot of businesses, an area that tends to be prone to error. And in terms of getting that wrong going forward, a business could be looking up to £5,000 per annum where they're not compliant, and that's on a VAT registration basis. So if there's multiple VAT registrations in a corporate group, it could add up. And then the next area is the digital links element. So this is looking at a business's entire system architecture, really, or software architecture, looking at which areas feed into the VAT return process. So it could start with a billing system or procurement system feeding into an accounting system, and then maybe some third-party solution or even spreadsheets might still be utilized for VAT return preparation. And when that's happening, making sure that digital links are embedded in between these disparate softwares. So making sure where there's a billing system feeding into an accounting system, do these systems talk to each other? If not, how does information flow? Is it a case of extracting some information from the billing system, manual intervention then happens to get it into the right format, which we see many businesses do, to then be able to allow the accounting software to ingest that information? Is that compliant? If you're utilizing some sort of manual intervention, probably not, but it's definitely one to investigate.
And just a couple of quick questions, because we're conscious of time today. In terms of, I guess it's not just the size of the penalties, it's you've probably got on HMRC's naughty list as a result of getting these kind of penalties, and that could lead to other things. So interested in your thoughts on that. And then last point before moving on to Jim, in terms of what should organizations be doing with this type of information?
Yeah, exactly. So if you're not compliant, it's not just the contour of the penalties, getting on that naughty list and potentially getting some extra inspections by HMRC. And also there's this requirement for checking functions as well. So in terms of that, it's quite broad ask from HMRC, a new expectation. But in terms of what we've been seeing and what we probably businesses should be looking at is really making sure that whatever ERP is in place, making sure that's optimized as much as possible, and then looking at third-party solutions where some sort of VAT return preparation needs to be done outside the ERP solution, or if there is a sticky plaster solution, which we've seen many businesses still utilizing, where they have one-to-one formulas such as sheet 1 A1 equals sheet 2 B2, where we have that. Maybe there's an alternative way, such as utilizing something like an Alteryx automated flow. So making sure these kind of three areas are looked at and leveraged where possible, I think is quite key.
Perfect. Thank you, Amit. Really appreciate that. Sorry to cut you a little bit short there, but I want to make sure I give Jim the lion's share of today's conversation. Jim, over to you. Thank you ever so much for joining us today, and I appreciate you spending some time, but really great to hear from you and looking forward to seeing what you've got to say about Cygnet.
No, thank you so much, Ian, and good morning to you. Good morning, Amit, and good morning to the audience. So, well, firstly, thank you, Ian, for inviting Cygnet to one of your webinars. That's really great for us. And now everyone's probably thinking, here comes another tax technology company, and they're probably right. But we do have a whole series of tax technology solutions, but our ethos is a little bit different. Cygnet is kind of working with corporations alongside its partners like BDO to help break down the internal barriers and pushing real digitization and automation. Now, look, this doesn't apply to everybody, but it will do soon. Times are changing. In the past, indirect tax teams have bought and implemented products and services, but not with proper online joined up processes. Now, that's been the norm, and we want to change that. A good example of this is, if I take indirect tax analytics, analyzing data for errors and anomalies, which typically wouldn't happen until you start preparing the return. Now, if we can have both our expert resources and tax processes digitally integrated, that allows us to respond to business needs as they occur rather than later on. And I think that's quite important in our indirect tax compliance world. Another area is lack of standardization. It's a norm when we see tax teams dealing with different business units, different jurisdictions, different processes. Now, this gives rise to repetitive issues. And that's another area we want to try and minimize and eliminate if possible. Now, these are just a couple of areas that are examples of how we can improve through digitization and automation. Now, we want to encourage organizations to review emerging new technologies, and that's why I'm here today. So I'd like to sort of showcase one of our solutions, which is our global VAT reporting solution. But before I do that, I thought I'd jump in to a couple of PowerPoint slides to tell you a little bit about Cygnet. As Ian said, you may have heard of us or you may not have heard of us. So I'm just going to share my screen if you just bear with me 1 second. So Cygnet is a global tax technology company. The company has been going over 20 years, and we do have fantastic footprint globally. The heat map in front of you shows that we have presence all over the world. Now, we're headquartered in India. That's where the majority of our staff is. We have over 1,000 staff worldwide. The vast majority of those are in a place called Ahmedabad, which is our headquarters, but we also have quite a significant presence in different regions like the Middle East, Germany, US, and the UK, which is where I am. Over the years, Cygnet has acquired many accreditations, as you can see there on the right-hand side, and we've partnered with many organizations. Now, the business itself is split into two fundamental areas, and this slide kind of represents what those areas are. On the right-hand side, we have something called Cygnet Infotech, which is our main brand. But more recently, that's been split into two. We're now Cygnet Tax Tech. That's the tax technology area. Tax technology is a whole bunch of solutions, which I'll give you a little overview of in a second. Mostly focusing on indirect tax, but between our Infotech business and our tax tech business, we have a whole suite of other products, primarily aiming at the fintech industry. That could be digital signing solutions, accounting software, AP automation software. But as far as today's concerned, let's focus on the task in hand, which is indirect tax technology solutions. Our flagship solution within this area is our global VAT reporting software. I've highlighted that in the middle, but we also have a whole suite of other products that will range from e-invoicing, data validation software, compliance management software, AP automation software. Now, if I focus on our global VAT reporting solution, and some of you will have seen a diagram like this in some shape or form, maybe even through your own internal processes. This is quite a common end-to-end process. But I want to use this to kind of showcase what our solution does. Now, I've used the term digitization and automation quite a lot in my earlier words. That's key when we're buying a product. We want to make sure that we integrate our systems in near real time with the source systems. Now, whether that's my ERP system, whether that's my expense management system, or whatever the data sources are, that way we can pull all the required data for, say, VAT reporting. Now, our solution in the middle, before it even gets to the return preparation, likes to analyze data. And this repetitive task, I hope my arrows that are going round in a circle are quite clear in front of you. But what that tries to represent is trying to create a daily or a weekly feed of transactional data that goes to whatever return you're preparing, whether it's an EC sales list, whether it's Intrastat, or whether it's a VAT return. This kind of repetitive motion allows teams to have high levels of automation, identifying errors and anomalies, and that all happens in near real time. But that then puts us in a strong position when we come to prepare the return. The return that we're preparing has much cleaner data, validated data, so that means less repetitive tasks on the expert that's managing the return preparation. And of course, then, as you would expect any software to do, which is to prepare the return, which we do pretty seamlessly. If you're MTD in the UK, then clearly we'll file that for you direct. We are HMRC recognised. If we're talking about other jurisdictions, so we cover most of the EU and further afield, we will prepare the required file, digital file, whether that's an XML file. Some regions even still require PDF. Amit might correct me on that, but we will prepare the compatible file for you. Now, I want to jump away from PowerPoint now. I want to kind of showcase our new software, which is a global VAT reporting software. Just bear with me while I share the screens. So what we have in front of us now is our global VAT reporting solution. And forgive me while I turn away, I'm using multiple screens. Our solution is a pure 100% SaaS solution. The solution that you see in front of you is running on a Chrome web browser. Now, our solution is compatible with most supported web browsers. So whether you're using Internet Explorer web browser or Chrome or Firefox, it's been tested on every system. But let's just have a look at what the system does. And I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of this. Now, what you see in front of you is a login that's personal to me. So when I log into my solution, I will have access to all of the companies that I am working on. And those companies are all listed in an organized fashion. Now, I'm using my portfolio of companies to look at one particular company, and that particular company is a dummy company called, I'm sorry, I just need to log in here 1 second. I think I was timed out earlier. I should have logged in as I jumped into the software, so just bear with me a second. So just jumping back to my example company, which is called McLaren Limited. Now, when I first go in through my login, the first thing I will see is everything I'm responsible for. And I've chosen to look at a company, a dummy company, and I've set up my dashboard to configure what I want to see. So, and I want to see a whole bunch of analytics, whether it's sales statistics, purchase statistics, and even various trends in my VAT data that goes into the return. But what's really nice about the user interface in our software is that it's very easy to follow. On the left-hand side, we have a very simple menu system, and we've developed the software in such a way that we've reduced the number of clicks that it requires you to get from your source data to the actual draft return. And I'll demonstrate that in a second. Now, typically, you know, if we were implementing this solution within a corporation, we would highly recommend they integrate with source data. That's not mandatory. You can upload data yourself directly using automated bulk upload. Now, I've been asked the question many times. I mean, do I need to have such a complex process to upload data? It's not complicated. The technology that goes into the connectors and the integrators is much more simplified and easier to implement now. So when my data comes in, I can review that data. Now, I talked earlier about what happens to that data before I even get to the returns process. Well, firstly is all of my data comes through and I can review every single transaction that goes through. Because of the way the data is collected, I can also view invoice information within each transaction, and that's easily available at my fingertips. No longer do I have to go to another solution, another spreadsheet. In addition to my sales data or my purchase data, the system does give me a whole bunch of warnings. Now, remember, I should have been churning through these warnings before month-end close, not when I'm preparing the return. But I'm just giving you an example of some of the errors that come through here. Now, Cygnet have implemented over 400 different errors into the software. Now, that's not just on VAT returns, that's on a whole bunch of returns and declarations, whether it's interest out or EC sales or local listings. But it gives me the opportunity to not only just clearly pinpoint the error here, and we can see that the error message above relates to boxes highlighted on this transaction, and we can see that there's a problem. Now, I won't go into the error here because I'm conscious of time, but once all my errors are cleared, I can then view my VAT return. And the most interesting part of the VAT return, and again, if I'm multi-country, the system has the tax content and the capabilities of identifying exactly what goes into the return, how many boxes there are, and so forth. But one of our big USPs here is that, and we know that sometimes there's a lot of errors and validations coming through, is the way Cygnet software not only populates all the boxes with the numbers, but also identifies that if I've got some errors and validations, what is the difference? Is that a margin? Is that number material? Yes, it is. Go back and fix it. Now, I would fix that at source. So when the next data run comes in, that means my data is cleaner rather than fix it in the return. If I do fix it in the return, yes, I can do that, but the best is at source. I do have an audit trail if it does need fixing in the return. Now, going back to the return, as you would expect, you need the granularity to be able to see what's actually going in the return. If any of my transactions relate to particular areas of box numbers, and they're all summarized here, and this is sensitive to the country that I'm working on. So you can see here, these are the numbers that make up all the different categories for box 1 on the UK VAT return. So I hope that this gives you a reasonable view of our software. Clearly, this is by no means a deep dive demonstration, and there's lots more I can show you about this. There's lots more I can tell you about some of our USPs, which is one of them is to do with partial exemption. We have a really rich functionality to do with partial exemption calculations. It's an area that we're investing in heavily, and we're pushing it into the software to make life easier for organizations that need to have multiple rates aligned against different transactions. So, well, thank you all for that. Ian, back to you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate you taking us through that. Just on that USP point, just I'm always interested, particularly when we've got new entrants into the market. There's obviously lots of VAT vendors and lots of VAT solutions out there, and if people are thinking about considering an alternative or trying to make sure that they're compliant to this area, what's the one thing you want to leave them with? What's the one differentiator that Cygnet and R7 is able to offer in this area?
Yeah, no, brilliant question, Ian. And I think one of our core key USPs is the ease of use and our user interface. Now, this is expanding into a long sentence for me, but I think historically, getting to know a bit of software takes a bit of time, a little bit of training. Our software, as I said right at the start, the number of clicks to get you to the final return position is considerably less. With that digitization and automation, when the data comes in, there's very limited number of clicks for you to review the final return, get it approved and start submitting. And that's one of our big USPs. And if I can jump in with one more, I know you've only asked me for one, but another one is our capabilities of handling large volumes of data very quickly. Now, we recognize that there's been a huge e-commerce boom worldwide, and we've got a number of big retail companies on board, and they are processing huge transactional volumes of data, pulling into the return, which typically you would leave outside of the process and maybe only pull in summary data. We pull in every single transactions. I'm talking from thousands to millions of transactions in each box of the return. And our capabilities are very strong there. So they're my two takeaways, two USPs.
And we do have a question from the audience. Does the system learn, for example, if errors are not actually errors? Can those notifications reduce over time or be switched off? So I guess it's asking about what intelligence, machine learning are you building into the product, Jim, to try and make everyone's lives easier?
There's an element of AI. Yes, we do retain data in terms of error that has been picked up. But as far as the actual return is concerned, we strongly encourage going back to source to fix those errors, because those errors need to be fixed in the main data source, whether it's ERP or some other system. Otherwise, they become repetitive. It's easy for us to pick them up. And there's a little bit of AI technology in our software that recognizes that it's arrived again. But we highly recommend that data is fixed at source rather than keep fixing it in the solution.
Perfect. One more. Does the solution have a GL VAT account reconciliation capabilities? We're getting into some proper detailed questions here.
Absolutely. Another great question. And clearly, if I had time, I would showcase all of that. Yes. So we can upload my GL data and we can reconcile that back to the VAT return 100%. Yes.
Great stuff. That's all of the questions from the audience. Amit, anything from you? Obviously, you know the software pretty well. Anything from you for Jim today that the audience might be interested in?
Yeah, Jim, it was just about the data transformation bit, actually, because this is being implemented myself. I know for many businesses, this is a bit of an issue. So you buy some third-party software, but then you can't get your data into the software. So it's just about that one point that I was quite impressed on, actually, was the capability to utilize RPA, for example, to automate this data transformation bit. So just about that, really, if you could just expand on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great.
In 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds, yeah, great question, Amit. So yes, having robotics in that process is key now going forward. We mustn't just buy a product and run it. We need to integrate it in near real time using online technology. We do that. Technology has allowed us to make that much easier and faster to implement. And we do that through pre-built connectors and extractors.
Perfect. Right, I promised 30 minutes. I'm going to keep to that promise. Thank you all very, very much for joining. Everyone will be emailed the link to the video for anybody that missed. There will be an opportunity for those that are interested in a deeper dive with Jim and Amit into this particular topic later in the next couple of weeks, and we'll send out some details on that. But thank you all very much for joining me and Amit and Jim this morning. I hope you found that useful. If you do have any suggestions for other topics, please let me know. But have a great day, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.